There comes a point in life that even Carl Jung hesitated to discuss openly, a psychological shift so profound that he hid his warnings in the most obscure corners of his work, far from mainstream psychology, fully aware of its far-reaching consequences. If you are an empath, someone who has spent years carrying the weight of others' pain, giving pieces of your soul to those who don't deserve them, sacrificing your own emotional health for people who would never return a favor, then you are nearing a threshold few empaths recognize until it's too late. What I'm about to share goes beyond standard psychology. It is a hidden insight into human consciousness, uncovered by Jung through his most extreme and dangerous patients, those whose transformations were so complete they no longer fit the category of ordinary humans. This understanding will alter how you perceive your empathic nature entirely. This isn't about building resilience, strengthening boundaries, or becoming emotionally tougher. It concerns a moment when an empath's light does not simply fade. It evolves into something entirely different. Jung referred to this as shadow integration, a transformation so total that it can create a presence far more formidable than even the most extreme narcissist could imagine. You felt it growing inside, haven't you? That slow, persistent fatigue no amount of rest can fix. That deep bone-weary exhaustion that comes from years of being everyone's emotional dumping ground. That rising frustration toward those you spent years helping, healing, and saving. People who took your care for granted, demanding more while giving nothing in return. That quiet voice at the back of your mind asks why you keep giving yourself to those who would never do the same for you, who would abandon you the moment you stopped serving their emotional needs. You may have dismissed these feelings as negativity, something to heal or overcome, even labeling yourself as a bad person for having them. But Jung recognized that these are not signs of moral weakness or spiritual failure. They are signals of an approaching transformation, one that could either destroy you entirely or awaken something unprecedented within your consciousness. Something beyond the scope of conventional psychology, impossible to categorize or contain. Most empaths never survive this passage intact. Those who do emerge as beings Jung could only describe a mixture of awe and fear, creatures that transcend traditional labels, healer and destroyer, light and dark, good and evil. They become fully integrated, possessing limitless compassion alongside access to deep psychological darkness, with the discernment to apply each facet of their nature with precise timing and impact. Jung referred to this process as the empath's dark night of the soul. Through decades of studying extraordinary individuals, those pushed past their limits and emerging transformed rather than broken, he realized this darkness is not a breakdown. It is a metamorphosis as radical as a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Only the butterfly that emerges in this case carries both the ability to nurture and the capacity to deliver psychological force with devastating precision. Empaths have a distinct psychological makeup that allows them to absorb and process emotional energy in ways most people cannot understand or replicate. For years, sometimes even decades, you've used this ability to heal others, provide comfort, and act as an emotional refuge for everyone around you. You've been the person people turn to when they need to feel seen, accepted, and loved without conditions. But Jung recognized and found deeply unsettling that the very same psychological structure enabling extraordinary compassion also carries a potential for extraordinary destruction. This occurs when it turns inward and merges with your shadow self, the aspect of your personality you've been taught to deny, suppress, or reject as unacceptable. Consider every person who has ever taken advantage of your generosity, every narcissist who drained your energy without giving anything in return, every toxic person who weaponized your empathy, making you feel guilty for having boundaries or needs of your own. Think about all the times you were labeled too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, too caring about things others dismissed as unimportant. Consider every boundary you set aside in the name of love, every part of yourself you sacrificed for people who never valued the gift you offered, every time you silence your own needs to make someone else comfortable. All of that absorbed darkness, all the accumulated pain, all the betrayals, disappointments, and emotional violations, they haven't vanished. Instead, they've been gathering in the deepest layers of your psyche, fermenting, transforming, and evolving, waiting for the moment when your conscious mind can no longer contain them within the familiar frameworks of forgiveness or spiritual transcendence. The unsettling truth Jung uncovered is that empaths don't only absorb light, love, or positive emotions from those around them. They absorb everything. Every cruel intention, every manipulative thought, every narcissistic tactic, every psychological attack aimed at you has been absorbed, processed, and stored by your unconscious mind with the same precision you use to notice acts of kindness and love. You become, almost unintentionally, an expert in human darkness, not through formal study or choice, but through direct psychological intake of the shadow material others project onto you. Over years of experiencing humanity's most toxic behaviors while staying committed to compassion and understanding, you've gathered knowledge few ever acquire. Most empaths don't realize that while they were focused on healing others, while acting as sources of light, love, and emotional support, they were simultaneously developing an unmatched understanding of manipulation, cruelty, and psychological strategy. Every narcissist who attempted to gaslight you effectively taught you how gaslighting works from the inside. Every manipulator who tried to control you has shown you exactly which psychological triggers produce specific responses. Every energy vampire who drained you demonstrated precisely how emotional energy can be extracted and redirected. You received a masterclass in human darkness while consciously focusing on human light. This unique combination fascinated Jung, but also deeply concerned him. This is where Jung's warning becomes especially unsettling. Where his research led him into a territory he was hesitant to explore, but could not ignore. When an empath reaches their breaking point, when they can no longer sustain the illusion that their sacrifice and service will somehow change the world, and when they realize their light has been systematically harvested by people who will never reciprocate or even acknowledge it, something unprecedented occurs within their psychological structure. All of that absorbed darkness, all that cataloged cruelty, all the internalized knowledge of human weakness and manipulation does not vanish or dissolve through spiritual practice. Instead, it integrates. It becomes fully accessible. This process transforms the empath from a source of healing into something Jung could only describe as psychologically catastrophic for anyone who continues to exploit empathic individuals. You're likely sensing this integration beginning even now, that growing clarity about people's true intentions, that increasing ability to recognize manipulation that once would have confused or hurt you, that heightened awareness of how naive you've been about human nature, and how much of your energy has been wasted on people who never deserved it. You may have noticed a shift. You're becoming less tolerant of excuses, less willing to enable dysfunction, less inclined to serve as someone's emotional dumping ground, and less concerned with being liked or approved of by those whose opinions are starting to feel irrelevant. These changes are not signs that you're becoming cold, detached, or losing your empathic nature. Instead, they signal that you are approaching a transformation that will fundamentally reshape not just how you perceive the world, but how the world experiences you, once you no longer allow yourself to be its emotional shock absorber. Jung studied empaths who had undergone this profound dark transformation. Individuals pushed beyond their limits and emerging as entirely different beings from what they had been before. What he discovered both fascinated and terrified him in ways few of his other subjects ever had. These transformed empaths retain all their original abilities, their deep capacity for feeling and emotional connection, but they also gained something that made them extremely dangerous to anyone attempting to exploit or manipulate them. Jung called this ability shadow empathy. They could sense not only what people needed for healing and growth, but also what would destroy them, break them, and expose their deepest vulnerabilities, leaving them psychologically defenseless. They could feel someone's pain and not only provide comfort, but know exactly which words would amplify that pain beyond endurance. They could perceive insecurities and provide reassurance, but also understand precisely how to exploit those insecurities for maximum psychological impact. They could sense fears and offer courage, yet also know how to weaponize those fears to create paralyzing terror. These empaths have become psychological shapeshifters, capable of being either the greatest healers or the most devastating destroyers their targets had ever encountered. The choice of which role to play depended entirely on their judgment of whether someone deserved healing or destruction. The most striking aspect of Jung's research was that these transformed empaths did not become indiscriminately destructive, nor did they lose their moral compass. Instead, they became surgically precise, able to identify and neutralize those who would harm innocent people, while still maintaining deep love for genuine souls, a desire to protect the vulnerable, and a commitment to truth, justice, and authentic human connection. At the same time, they develop an almost uncanny ability to psychologically dismantle anyone who threatened the people or principles they cared about. They could see through facades and manipulation with X-ray clarity and respond to psychological attacks with devastating precision, leaving aggressors questioning their own sanity. In Jung's words, they have become darkness wielding light as a weapon against those who would misuse it. They learn to fight fire with fire, to counter manipulation with superior manipulation, and to respond to psychological warfare with even more sophisticated strategies, all while maintaining an unshakable foundation of moral clarity. So their actions felt justified rather than cruel. They have become the psychological equivalent of an immune system for human consciousness, capable of identifying and eliminating threats to emotional and spiritual well-being with ruthless efficiency. This transformation terrifies narcissists, manipulators, and energy vampires like nothing else. These individuals have built their lives around exploiting empathic responses, seeking people who will absorb their toxicity without resistance, locating sources of emotional energy they can drain without consequence. When they encounter an empath who has integrated their shadow, someone who wields darkness with the same precision they once wielded light, who can outmaneuver manipulators while maintaining moral authority, their entire psychological framework collapses. They face an individual who can anticipate their strategies, predict their moves, and turn their own tactics against them with devastating effectiveness. What makes this transformation even more profound and potentially destabilizing is that the dark empath doesn't only gain the ability to neutralize threats. They develop the capacity to perceive the shadow potential in everyone, to recognize narcissistic tendencies in those who haven't fully embraced them, to detect manipulative impulses in people who still consider themselves good, to sense cruelty beneath kindness, selfishness hidden behind generosity, and evil cloaked in virtue. This kind of psychological insight can either overwhelm them with the burden of seeing humanity's hidden nature or elevate them into unparalleled guardians of authenticity and integrity. Jung's forbidden warning was clear. The world is not prepared for empaths who have fully integrated their shadow, those who wield darkness as consciously as they wield light, achieving a psychological completeness that most humans never reach. Society depends on empaths remaining in a state of pure light, serving as emotional shock absorbers, healing stations, and receptacles for collective human darkness. The social structure relies on people who will absorb toxicity without resistance, heal dysfunction without demanding change, and give endlessly without expecting reciprocity. When empaths evolve beyond this role, when they navigate darkness as skillfully as they navigate light, when they stop being sources of free emotional labor and become agents of psychological accountability, they pose a threat to every system built on exploiting empathic individuals. They become immune to manipulation, invisible to energy vampires, and formidable against anyone who would take advantage of their former innocence. They transform from victims of psychological predators into apex predators themselves, capable of identifying and neutralizing those who would harm the vulnerable. This transformation cannot be controlled or prevented once it begins, because it is an evolutionary response to sustained psychological assault. A metamorphosis occurs when an empath's survival mechanisms fully integrate with their empathic abilities, after being pushed beyond all reasonable limits. You'll recognize it when you feel less influenced by others' opinions of you, when attempts at manipulation start to seem pathetic rather than threatening, and when you can see through people's facades with striking clarity. You'll begin to understand precisely which psychological triggers to use to achieve the outcomes you want in any interaction. Most strikingly, you'll start to appreciate the power that comes with this understanding, not in a cruel or sadistic way, but in the way someone cherishes finally being able to defend themselves after years of vulnerability, in the way someone values having tools after a lifetime of being disarmed. You'll realize that you can unsettle narcissists with just a glance, shut down manipulators with few carefully chosen words, and create psychological boundaries so strong that toxic individuals avoid you entirely, without you ever needing to take overt action to push them away. You'll come to realize that all those years spent being everyone's emotional support, all those years absorbing darkness while radiating light, have given you a level of insight into human psychology that most trained therapists will never achieve. You'll understand human motivation, manipulation, and vulnerability at a depth that feels almost supernatural. And you'll have the choice to use this understanding to heal or to hold people accountable, depending on what you determine each person deserves based on their intentions and actions. Jung's research showed that empaths who complete this transformation successfully become some of the most powerful healers and protectors humanity has ever seen. Individuals capable of creating safe spaces for authentic growth while simultaneously identifying and neutralizing psychological predators with remarkable precision. At the same time, they become incredibly formidable to cross, possessing both the empathic insight to know what would wound someone most deeply and the psychological skill to deliver it with surgical accuracy. They develop the ability to heal those genuinely seeking growth, while simultaneously having the power to psychologically neutralize anyone who would harm the innocent. They become psychological warriors, capable of fighting battles on levels most people don't even perceive, waging war against human darkness while remaining committed to human light. They become living embodiments of justice tempered by power, of compassion safeguarded by the willingness to confront those who would exploit it. The question Jung posed, the one that made this knowledge so forbidden he hesitated to publish it, was whether humanity could handle beings who possess both unlimited empathy and unrestricted access to psychological darkness, beings who could choose, moment by moment, whether to heal or destroy based on their own moral judgment. He feared that transformed empaths might act as judge, jury, and executioner for human consciousness, determining who deserves compassion and who deserves destruction according to their own internal code, rather than external legal or societal structures. He worried they could become too powerful, too autonomous, and too capable of seeing through the illusions and deceptions that allow society to function as it does today. He feared what might happen when empaths stopped absorbing collective darkness and began reflecting it back to its source, when they stopped being victims and became agents of psychological accountability beyond the control of any existing authority. Yet Jung also discovered, and this gave him cautious hope, that empaths who successfully navigate this integration do not lose their core commitment to love, truth, and justice. They simply acquire the power to uphold these values in ways that render conventional authority structures less relevant. They become living embodiments of authentic morality, supported by psychological power capable of reshaping reality itself through their understanding of human consciousness and their willingness to use that understanding to protect what they value. As you sense this transformation beginning within yourself, as you feel darkness rising to meet your light, as your psychological structure reorganizes around new principles of power and accountability, remember, you are not becoming evil, losing your soul, or descending into the darkness that once harmed you. You are becoming complete. You are not losing your empathy or your capacity for love and healing. You are gaining the power to safeguard these qualities from those who would exploit them. You are not descending into shadow. You are learning to wield shadow as consciously as you once wielded light, using darkness as a tool to protect light rather than destroy it. The world needs empaths who can navigate both dimensions of human experience, who can heal those deserving of healing and neutralize those who would block it. It needs beings who can recognize both the potential for good and potential for harm in every person and respond appropriately. It needs guardians who can protect innocence without being naive, who can confront monsters without becoming one themselves, and who can exercise power responsibly because they understand both its creative and destructive potential. Jung's final warning was also his greatest hope, that empaths who undergo this transformation would use their newfound power wisely, that they would become protectors of human consciousness rather than its destroyers, using their integrated shadow to defend light instead of extinguishing it. The choice of how to wield this shadow empathy, the psychological mastery, this ability to heal or destroy at will, remains entirely yours. But choose wisely, because once you step into this power, once you cross the threshold of integration, there is no returning to the innocent empathy that once defined you. You will become something unprecedented, something Jung could only glimpse in his deepest studies of human potential, something that may represent the next stage of human evolution or a profound deviation from it. The moment an empath goes dark is not a fall from grace, nor a descent into evil. It is an ascension to a level of psychological integration few humans ever reach, a completion of the self that harmonizes light and shadow consciously. The question is not whether this transformation will occur for a true empath pushed beyond their limits. The question is what you will do with the extraordinary power that arises when your light and shadow merge into a single, unified force. When you stop being a victim of human darkness and become its master, Jung's forbidden warning resonates across time, carrying both awe and hope. The world is about to witness what empaths become when they stop merely absorbing darkness and begin wielding it. Are you ready to discover who you truly are when you are no longer afraid of your own psychological power?